What does it feel like to commit the perfect crime? Not just get away with it, but architect every variable, anticipate every outcome, and watch your plan unfold exactly the way you designed it. That's what one cold, methodical genius believes he's achieved. And for a long time, it seems like he's completely right. At the beginning of the movie, we are introduced to Theodore Crawford, Ted, to those who know him. He's a wealthy aeronautics engineer living in a sprawling California mansion, admired professionally for his extraordinary analytical mind. Ted designs things that fly, structures engineered down to the smallest detail, where a single miscalculation can cost lives. He applies this same obsessive precision to everything in his world. But beneath that polished, successful exterior, Ted's marriage to his wife Jennifer has quietly hollowed out into something cold and procedural. No real warmth, no connection, just two people sharing a house. And if that were the full extent of his problems, Ted might have continued living in quiet discontent. But Jennifer has made a choice that changes everything. She's having an affair, not with just anyone either. The man she's been secretly meeting twice a week at a hotel across town is Lieutenant Rob Nunali, a police hostage negotiator. Ted has known about this for some time. He hasn't confronted her. He hasn't lost control. Instead, he's been quietly cataloging every detail, studying the situation the way he'd study a structural flaw in a wing, looking for the exact point where everything can be made to break. One afternoon, Ted wraps up a client meeting early and drives past the hotel where he suspects they're meeting. Before going inside, he stops at a public payphone and calls the police station to confirm that Rob is scheduled to be on duty that evening. Satisfied, he enters the hotel, slips into the room while Jennifer and Rob are out at the pool, and stands silently at the foot of their disheveled bed. He takes it all in. Then he leaves without touching a single thing, without leaving a single trace. That evening, Jennifer returns home to find Ted waiting for her. He is almost never home this early, and panic flickers behind her eyes even as she tries to suppress it. Ted begins pressing her with dangerous, pointed questions. Does she still love him? Does her boyfriend love her too? Jennifer starts to apologize. Ted doesn't need the apology. He raises the gun and fires. The gardener, Cairo, hears the shot and rushes to the front door, banging frantically. Ted ignores him. Calmly, methodically, he changes his clothes, destroys everything he was wearing, and waits. Police flood the property minutes later. Jennifer is discovered still breathing, barely, and rushed to the hospital. Then the assigned hostage negotiator arrives on the scene, Lieutenant Rob Nunali, because Ted had made that phone call for a reason. Ted lets Rob inside and persuades him to surrender his service weapons so they can speak calmly. Then, without any particular emotion, he points Rob toward Jennifer's broken body on the floor. The moment Rob recognizes her, something inside him completely shatters. He rushes to her side, searching desperately for a pulse, until Ted starts making provocative remarks that push him past his limit. Rob erupts, physically attacking Ted before fellow officers drag him off. And there it is, the fracture Ted had been designing all along, because Rob's violent outburst in front of every officer on scene has just compromised everything connected to his name in this case. Ted smiles. Meanwhile, across the city we are introduced to Willie Beecham, a sharp, ambitious, young district attorney with a near-perfect conviction record and the kind of confidence that comes from never having lost a case he couldn't crack. Willie has just accepted a position at Wooten and Sims, the city's most prestigious law firm. His boss, D.A. Joe, makes one final appeal to keep him. Willie appreciates it, but his mind is already elsewhere. That same evening, while trying on a rented tuxedo for a law firm charity event, Willie receives a last-minute call asking him to cover an arraignment. Open and shut, his colleague promises. A wealthy man who shot his wife confessed immediately and signed everything. Willie rushes to court in the tuxedo. The arraignment tells an entirely different story. Ted Crawford enters the courtroom, completely at ease, calm, almost entertained, and announces he will be representing himself. He waives the preliminary hearing and asks to go directly to trial. The judge warns him. Ted smiles pleasantly, and then, in the middle of everything, he pauses to study Willie's crooked bow tie, staring at it with quiet deliberateness before subtly gesturing for him to fix it. Willie fixes it. Nobody in that room knows what to make of this, but the gesture reveals everything about who Ted Crawford is. A man who controls every environment he enters without raising his voice or breaking a sweat. Before leaving the courtroom, Ted makes one additional request. He wants Willie, specifically, to remain as his prosecutor. Because he likes him, he explains. Nobody argues. At the charity event that evening, Willie meets Nikki Gardner, his new supervisor at the law firm, composed, perceptive, and impressive. Between the handshakes and champagne, Detective Flores calls with disturbing news. The gun recovered from the Crawford home was never fired, and since Ted never left the property before his arrest, the actual murder weapon must still be somewhere inside. Yet the detectives tore the house apart and found nothing. Willie orders a second search and tries to push the unease out of his mind. The following days pile pressure onto him from all directions. When Willie visits Ted in prison to hand over discovery files, he expects to find a man wrestling with fear or regret. Instead, Ted greets him like an old acquaintance, leans back comfortably, and immediately asks, grinning, whether the prosecution has managed to locate the murder weapon yet. He reveals that he hired a private investigator to study Willie's entire history, law school, his debt, his conviction record. He even offers Willie a significant payment to switch sides and represent him, insisting that Willie deserves to be on the winning side. Willie declines, but when he walks back out into the corridor, something has changed inside him. A quiet, unsettling feeling that this man is not defending himself. He's conducting something. The trial begins. Willie methodically presents his case. Cairo testifies that Ted came home unusually early that day, that Jennifer arrived shortly after, and that gunshots rang out moments later, with nobody entering or leaving the property before police arrived. An officer confirms the perimeter was completely sealed from the beginning. A forensic physician describes Jennifer's injuries as catastrophic, severe, targeted damage to her frontal lobe. Through all of it, Ted sits at the defense table and quietly doodles, declining every opportunity to cross-examine anyone. He seems almost bored, or perhaps he's simply waiting. Then Willie calls his fourth witness, Lieutenant Rob Nunnally. Rob recounts every detail with careful, deliberate precision, arriving on the scene, identifying Jennifer, Ted's verbal and written confession. It's powerful, credible testimony. And then, quietly, Ted speaks up for the very first time during the entire trial. His first objection. He doesn't know the precise legal terminology, he admits, so he asks the court plainly, "What do you call it when the man who arrested you and collected your confession was sleeping with your wife?" Every person in that courtroom stops breathing. Rob's composure collapses in an instant. He launches himself from the witness stand toward Ted before officers manage to restrain him, and for the second time, he has attacked the defendant in front of witnesses. In the judge's chambers, Ted's private investigator produces documented proof of the affair, hotel records, dates, everything. More damaging still, Ted argues that his confession was signed under duress, extracted while being interrogated by his wife's lover, who had already physically assaulted him. Any reasonable person, he notes calmly, would have confessed to anything under those circumstances. The judge agrees. The confession is excluded. All evidence gathered while Rob was involved is thrown out as poisoned fruit. The prosecution's entire foundation collapses beneath it. Ted requests bail in time for Thanksgiving. Joe removes Willie from the case, furious. That evening, Nikki tells Willie at a firm party that she fought to keep him from being fired. He should feel relieved. Instead, he goes home to find a box of broken eggshells waiting on his doorstep. Something shifts. Willie marches back to the DA's office, takes full responsibility for everything that went wrong, and demands the case back. Joe lays out the stakes plainly. Losing means losing the firm job, his prosecutor career, and any professional future he might have left. Willie accepts every one of those terms without hesitation. He finds Rob in shambles, abandoned by his family, hunted by the press, barely holding himself together. Rob explains that he met Jennifer twice weekly at a hotel and never knew her last name, her address, or that Ted had ever discovered them. He begs Willie for justice. Willie visits Jennifer at the hospital and reads to her at her bedside, willing her back. The doctor eventually pulls him aside and delivers the news he dreaded most. Even if she wakes, the brain damage is permanent and irreversible. She will never be able to speak, let alone testify. The only person who witnessed everything cannot tell anyone. A second search of the Crawford home turns up nothing. On Thanksgiving, Willie tells Nikki he's back on the case. She's furious. It undermines her authority with Bert and signals that Willie is someone the firm cannot control. The relationship begins to come apart. Willie drives home alone. That night, Rob appears in Willie's driveway with wild, desperate eyes, offering to plant the murder weapon in the evidence room through a contact he has there. Willie sends him home, but inside, a voicemail waits. The hotel surveillance footage is ready. Willie and Flores review it at the station. Ted is visible entering the hotel on the day of the shooting, wearing a wide-brimmed hat. Both men can see it's him, but the footage is grainy, the face is not clearly identifiable, and Willie refuses to anchor his case to footage a defense attorney could dismantle in minutes. They argue. They leave separately. Then Rob calls. He has planted the weapon. Willie goes to court, ready to use it. He even arranges for his assistant Mona to slip into the courtroom mid-trial and whisper in his ear that the weapon has been located. The moment comes. The judge asks Willie directly if he has any new evidence. Willie looks at Mona. He looks at Rob watching from the gallery. He looks at the judge. He tells the court he has nothing new. Ted is acquitted. As Ted passes Willie and Rob in the courthouse corridor, visibly savoring every second, a gunshot cuts through the air. Rob Nunnally, who has lost absolutely everything, has taken his own life. Ted glances at him and keeps walking. That night, Ted returns home, places his gun back in its case, and allows himself a rare, visible moment of satisfaction. Willie has nothing left. Fired from both jobs, stripped of everything he worked toward, he sits alone with the files, going over the entire case one final time. He visits Detective Flores at the station to review the evidence, and in a quiet, seemingly unremarkable moment, he watches as Flores reaches for the wrong phone, picks up Willie's instead of his own, answers it, realizes the mistake, and hands it back. Willie stares at the phone, and suddenly, the complete architecture of Ted's plan becomes blindingly clear. Ted purchased a second gun, identical to his registered firearm. Before the shooting, he swapped weapons. He placed his own registered gun into Rob's holster and kept Rob's service weapon for himself. He used Rob's gun to shoot Jennifer. When Rob arrived and they agreed to put down their weapons, Ted handed over the planted gun, the one that matched his registered firearm and had never been fired, while Rob unknowingly walked away, still carrying the actual murder weapon in his own holster. When Rob died in that courthouse hallway, he used the weapon that killed Jennifer on himself. Ted never had to hide the gun. He made someone else carry it out for him. That night, Willie drives to Ted's mansion, completely calm. He finds the registered weapon in its case, examines it closely, and then lays out the entire sequence, every deliberate move, every calculated step directly in front of Ted. Ted listens with undisguised admiration, and then, certain that double jeopardy prevents him from ever being tried again for the same crime, he confirms everything: the gun swap, the shooting, the orchestration, the satisfaction of watching Rob discover Jennifer's body. He declares with absolute confidence that the law has no path left to reach him. Willie waits for him to finish. Then he explains the one thing Ted failed to account for. Jennifer was alive during the first trial, which means Ted stood trial for attempted murder, not murder. Now that she has died, the charge is entirely different. A new crime, a new trial, one to which all of this newly uncovered evidence and Ted's own spontaneous confession can be freely applied. And the bullet lodged in Jennifer's head, the one that couldn't be removed while she was still alive, is now available as direct, irrefutable, physical evidence. For the first time in this entire story, the unshakable Ted Crawford looks shaken. Detective Flores steps in from the shadows and places him under arrest. At the new trial, Ted sits surrounded by a team of high-powered defense attorneys. Willie Beecham sits alone on the prosecution side. As the proceedings begin, Willie glances across the room at Ted and quietly gestures toward his own tie. Without thinking, Ted straightens his, and Willie smiles. Now before you leave, if you just watched this entire breakdown and you still haven't subscribed to this channel, honestly, I'm a little hurt. We put serious work into every one of these videos so you get the full story without missing a single thing. Hit that subscribe button right now. One tap, completely free, and you'll never miss another one of these. Don't be the person who watches, enjoys it, and disappears. And drop a comment below. At what exact moment did you figure out Ted's plan? Was it the gun swap, the double jeopardy twist, or did Willie beat you to it? Let's hear it.